Chosen one, you are not hearing this by accident. This is a serious, urgent, prophetic alert for you, and heaven is putting a spotlight on your life right now. Something you did recently has shifted the atmosphere around you. Your last decision, your last whispered prayer, that breaking point where you finally said, "God, I surrender. I give you everything." In that moment, you weren't just emotional. You were aligning yourself with a spiritual law that cannot be ignored. When your will bowed to God's will, the unseen realm responded. You thought you were collapsing, but in heaven's record, it was a turning point. I am talking directly to you, the one who almost gave up, who cried in secret and wiped your face before anyone could see, who felt utterly tired of pretending to be strong. You reached the end of yourself and placed what you could not control into God's hands, and that act sent a shockwave through the spiritual realm. Angels were reassigned around your life. Old assignments of darkness began to lose their grip. From that moment, the headline over your life changed from barely surviving to divine intervention in motion. Because of that surrender, a message is now moving toward you, shocking, sudden, and good. It is not coming to destroy you. It is coming to reveal truth, to expose what has been hidden, to close the wrong doors, and violently swing open the right ones. Some people will be surprised when they see what happens next. Some who thought you were finished will have to watch a reversal they cannot explain. But this next chapter is not about proving anything to them. It is about God fulfilling what He has quietly been preparing in you. So let me ask you, do you feel it in your spirit, that sense that something is about to shift, even if you cannot describe it yet? If this is resonating with you, do not stay silent. Agree with what heaven is doing. Declare it in the comments by typing 777. Tell me if this describes where you are and if this word hits your spirit. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to wake up to the power of their surrender. When you finally said, "God, I give you everything," heaven did not shrug and move on. In that moment of exhaustion and honesty, when your hands were shaking and your eyes were burning with tears, something far greater than your emotions was taking place. You were not simply collapsing, you were stepping into a spiritual law that has been true from the beginning. When a human will bends before the will of God, the unseen realm responds. You had spent so long trying to hold everything together by your own strength, trying to fix people, manage outcomes, predict betrayals, outrun disappointment. You made plans, you built backups for your backups, you rehearsed conversations in your mind, and still nothing felt secure. Then came that breaking point, where hiding your pain stopped working, where pretending to be fine became impossible, and one sentence slipped out of your soul: "Lord, I surrender." That sentence, though it felt like defeat, was actually a declaration of alignment. It was not the language of a loser. It was the language of a son or daughter returning authority to their true king. In that instant, you were not just talking into the air. You were signing something in the spirit. You were handing back the steering wheel, the rights, the timelines, the revenge fantasies, the secret ultimatums you had given God. You were saying, "You lead, I will follow," and heaven took you seriously. This is why that moment shook you more than your emotions. God has given you a real will, not a toy. He will not force it. He will not violate it, and He will not bypass it. So when your will, freely and consciously, bow and say, "I choose your way over mine," the authority structure around your life changes. What had been locked up by your insistence on control suddenly came under divine permission. Places where angels had been restrained by your stubbornness opened up. Old demonic assignments that fed on your pride, fear, and self-protection began to lose their legal claim. You did not see all of this, but the shockwave was real. Think of it like a stone thrown into a still lake. Your surrender was that stone. The ripples are still moving outwards into conversations you have not yet had, rooms you have not yet entered, decisions other people will make that you do not even know are being influenced right now. C.S. Lewis, in his book Mere Christianity, wrote about this deeper reality of the Christian life, that God is not interested in simply making you nice, but in killing the old self and bringing to life a new kind of person altogether. He explained that the more we cling to our independent, self-centered life, the more we lose the very thing we are trying to protect. But when we hand that life over to Christ, we begin, for the first time, to become truly ourselves. Your surrender was not the end of your identity. It was the beginning of your real one. You laid down the version of yourself built on fear, on performing, on people-pleasing, on constantly scanning the horizon for danger. You released the identity that was shaped by trauma and disappointment, and you allowed God to start forming the version of you that was in his heart before the pain ever happened. That is why what you did was so threatening to the kingdom of darkness. As long as you were fighting for control, the enemy could predict you, manipulate you, push your buttons. But when you finally said, "I am done trying to be my own savior," you broke a pattern that had run for years. You chose trust over suspicion, obedience over explanation, worship over endless reasoning. That choice is what gave heaven room to move. The Bible teaches that it is impossible to please God without faith. Hebrews 11:6. And faith is exactly what your surrender was. It was not blind denial of reality. It was a decision to place reality into the hands of someone greater than you. You did not have all the answers, but you chose the answerer. You did not know how the story would unfold, but you chose the author. From the outside, people might have seen you crying, withdrawing, going quiet, and they assumed you were just broken. They did not hear the covenant being renewed under your breath. They did not see the way your whispered yes echoed in courts they have never walked into. They did not feel the air shift when you finally let go of needing to control what others think, what others choose, how others treat you. Yet in the presence of God, that moment stands like a monument. It is recorded. It is remembered. It is the reason the next chapter can legally begin. And you need to understand this, because when the shocking news arrives, when doors open that you did not knock on, when truth surfaces in ways that stun you, you might be tempted to call it luck, coincidence, or random timing. But there is nothing random about it. The headline in the spirit on the day you surrendered was not failure. It was alignment. That act of laying down your will was the key that turned in the lock. That is why the message is now on its way to you. Not because you have been flawless, but because in your weakness, you chose to bow instead of break. This is the spiritual mathematics behind what is coming next in your life. What is coming toward your life right now is not a soft, comfortable memo. It is a disruptive announcement from heaven that will collide with your plans, confront your assumptions, and expose what has been hidden in the dark. It is shocking, not because God enjoys chaos, but because his intervention must cut through layers of lies, denial, and delay that have built up around you over the years. When heaven calls something urgent, you cannot afford to treat it as optional background noise. There is a message on its way to you that will make you stop in your tracks, sit down, and say, everything just changed. This is serious, this is weighty, and this is good. You need to understand that the shock factor is part of the mercy. If God whispered this gently and slowly, you might talk yourself out of it. You might rationalize it away, cling to what is familiar, and stay bound in the same cycles that have been draining you for years. So instead, he is sending something that will hit like a sudden turn in the road, like a phone call, a confession, a revelation, a decision made in a boardroom you were not in, but that still shifts your life. You may hear words you never expected to hear, see documents you were never supposed to see, and witness a door swing open that everyone else said was permanently sealed. It will surprise you, maybe even scare you for a moment, because it cuts across the script you had quietly written in your own mind about how your life would go from here. But hear this clearly. This is not a catastrophe. It is an interruption designed to save you from a quieter, more deadly catastrophe of staying stuck where you do not belong. There are things hidden around your life right now. Conversations behind doors, motives behind smiles, spiritual atmospheres behind familiar places. This message that is coming will begin to drag some of those things into the light. It may reveal why a certain door never opened, why a relationship always left you feeling small, and why opportunities slipped through your fingers at the last second. It may expose deception, manipulation, or double standards that you blamed yourself for. It may confirm that what your spirit felt was wrong really was wrong, even when others tried to gaslight you into believing you were overreacting. This is why you must be prepared. Revelation is beautiful, but it can also be jarring. When truth shows up uninvited, it can rearrange loyalties, schedules, and identities. Some people you trusted may be unmasked. Some paths you were walking may be cut off. Some dreams you thought were dead may suddenly be called back to life. And all of that happening in a concentrated window of time will feel intense. But it is intensity with purpose. This shocking news is also a realignment. Think of your life as a train that has been forced to travel on a track that was never fully meant for you. You have still moved, you have still learned, you have still grown. But something has always felt slightly off, slightly constrained, slightly wrong in your spirit. The message on its way is like a divine switch of the tracks. It reroutes you. It may appear at first like a delay, a complication, or an inconvenience, and the enemy will try to whisper that God is punishing you, that you are losing ground, that you made a mistake by surrendering. But the truth is the exact opposite. Because you surrendered, you have permitted God to stop the train, switch the rails, and send you in the direction He intended all along. Yes, it will be shocking, because you have grown used to surviving on the wrong track. You have normalized dysfunction, minimized your own pain, and explained away red flags as just the way things are. When God interrupts that, it feels like an earthquake. The ground you were standing on begins to tremble, the walls you were leaning on begin to crack, and suddenly you see that what you built your sense of stability on was never as stable as you thought. Do not confuse the collapse of false stability with the loss of real security. The real security of your life is not in that position, that person, that system, or that paycheck. It is in the one who saw you at your breaking point and heard your surrender. That is why this message is on its way in the first place. You did not trigger it by being perfect. You triggered it by finally letting go. This is also why you cannot dismiss what is coming as luck or coincidence. You will be tempted to. When the offer comes, when the truth comes out, when the apology arrives, when the door opens or closes with unusual force, your mind will reach for natural explanations. Maybe it was just timing. Maybe it would have happened anyway. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. But deep in your spirit, you will know this is different. This carries the scent of something orchestrated, not random. The pattern of events, the precision of the timing, the way multiple factors line up at once, all of it will bear the fingerprints of a God who has been arranging things behind the scenes since the day you whispered, "I surrender." There is a seriousness to this, because how you respond will matter. If you cling to what God is trying to remove, you will feel torn apart. If you run back to what He exposed, you will be running into a burning building. If you call evil good just to keep the peace, you will be choosing comfort over calling. This is not a season for casual responses. It is a season for sober, clear-eyed agreement with what heaven is doing, even when it overturns the table you were sitting at. On the other hand, if you receive this news with humility, with courage, with a willingness to move when God says move, it will not only reroute your life, it will vindicate you. People who misread your silence will see that you were not weak, you were being prepared. People who concluded you were done will realize they spoke too soon. people who thought you made the worst decision of your life by surrendering that situation will have to watch as God builds something stronger and truer in its place. The seriousness of this moment is not about fear. It is about weight. Your story is heavier than you realized. Your surrender carries more influence in the spirit than you knew. And the news that is coming is not a random headline. It is a divine announcement that your timeline has shifted. You are standing on the edge of before and after. How you choose to see, interpret, and respond to this coming interruption will either keep you in circles or propel you into the forward motion heaven has already begun for you. How many nights have you lain awake staring at the ceiling, wondering why it had to be you, why it had to hurt this much, why God seemed so silent while your heart was breaking? How many times have you wiped your face before anyone could see the tears, smiled in public while collapsing in private, telling yourself, I should be over this by now, even though the wound was still fresh? If that is you, if those words feel uncomfortably familiar, I want you to acknowledge it. Say it out loud where you are, and even write in the comments, that's me. Because what I am about to say is not theory. It is an explanation of what has been happening in your story. You have not just been bleeding. You have been in training. You have not just been abandoned. You have been separated for a purpose. You have not just been overlooked. You have been hidden on purpose by a God who refuses to let your destiny be cheapened by the wrong hands. For a long time, it felt like life was happening to you, not for you. People you trusted walked away when you were at your weakest. Opportunities you thought were finally it slipped through your fingers without warning. You tried to explain yourself, tried to fix things, tried to hold on to connections that were draining you, because the idea of being alone with your pain was terrifying. And so, when things fell apart anyway, you didn't just feel sad. You felt humiliated, like you had misheard God, misread every sign, misjudged every person. In those seasons, it is easy to conclude, I failed, I chose wrong, I must have ruined God's plan. But the truth is far deeper and more precise than that. There is a difference between destruction and pruning. Destruction is meant to leave you ruined. Pruning is painful, but it is surgical. It removes what will limit your future fruit. What you walked through was not random destruction. It was targeted pruning. The relationships that fell apart, the doors that slammed shut, the groups that quietly excluded you, the places where your name was not invited to the table, all of that felt like rejection. In reality, much of it was protection you did not recognize, because it did not come wrapped in comfort. Think of how many times, looking back, you can now see red flags you ignored, comments that revealed more than you wanted to admit, and atmospheres that never sat right with your spirit. Yet you stayed, because you were loyal, hopeful, afraid of starting over, or convinced that this was the best you would ever get. So when God stepped in and allowed certain things to shake until they broke, it felt like cruelty. But from his vantage point, he was rescuing you from being permanently tied to people, places, and patterns that could not hold the weight of who you are becoming. During those hidden years, while you thought nothing was changing, everything inside you was being restructured. Your threshold for pain increased, but so did your compassion. Your ability to discern shifted from a superficial reading of behavior to a deeper sensing of spirit. You learned the difference between charisma and character, between loud promises and quiet consistency. You learned what it means when someone's actions do not line up with their words, and your tolerance for being spiritually and emotionally manipulated began to die. All of that hurt, but all of that was curriculum. The scripture says that God works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. All things includes betrayal, misunderstanding, delays, and closed doors. It does not mean every event is good in itself, but it does mean that in the hands of the Master, nothing is wasted. Your worst nights are not exempt from the all. The days you could barely breathe from disappointment are not exempt from the all. The seasons where you were surrounded by people, yet felt completely unseen, are not exempt from the all. They are raw material in the hands of a God who refuses to let your suffering be pointless. While you were questioning your worth, He was strengthening your backbone. While you were asking why you were not invited to certain rooms, He was preserving you from forming soul ties with agendas that would have diluted your calling. While you were replaying conversations and wondering what you could have done differently, He was teaching you to recognize patterns of control and manipulation so that when new doors open, you will not naively walk into the same traps wearing a different costume. This is why what you have endured is so serious. It is not just about healing your heart. It is about shaping your discernment. You are being trusted with more in the future, and more requires depth. Shallow roots cannot hold up a tall tree. You ask God to use you, to bless you, to bring you into more, but you did not realize that meant He would have to deepen your roots through seasons where you had no choice but to cling to Him. If the shocking news and the new doors we talked about came into your life while you were still desperate for human approval, still willing to betray your own peace just to stay connected, still addicted to the familiar, no matter how toxic it was, the very blessing meant to lift you could have crushed you. So instead, God let some things break while He held you together. He allowed you to feel the sting of no, so that you would be able to recognize and protect the yes that is on its way. In secret, He has been maturing your responses. You used to chase explanations. Now you are learning to rest in His character. You used to beg for closure from people. Now you are learning to find closure at the feet of God. You used to go back to what broke you, over and over, because you hated the discomfort of letting go. Now you are starting to see that sometimes the greatest act of faith is refusing to return to the place where your soul was slowly bleeding out. The training has been intense, but it has not been random. It has been customized to your calling. You have been learning how to stand when no one claps, how to worship when no one understands, and how to obey when no one else sees the instruction you received. Those are not small lessons. Those are the very muscles you will need when the message arrives and your life begins to shift in public ways. You will need the ability to move with God without needing everyone's approval. You will need the courage to walk away from offers that glitter but do not carry His peace. You will need the clarity to recognize that just because someone suddenly wants access to you after God elevates you does not mean they are meant to walk with you. Right now, as you think back on the last season, I want you to see it differently. Not as wasted years, but as a hidden boot camp. Not as proof that God ignored you, but as evidence that He was willing to do the harder, slower work of building you from the inside out. If you are starting to sense that your pain had a purpose, that the tears and the silence and the lonely nights have been part of a larger story, I want you to agree with it, not just in your mind but with your words. Say it where you are, and if you can, write it in the comments as a declaration of faith. My pain will not be wasted. Stepping into a new season with God is not like walking onto a soft, well-lit stage where everyone is clapping for you and everything is easy. Very often, it feels more like stepping through a door into bright light after you have been in a dark room for a long time. Your eyes hurt. Your balance is off. Your first instinct might even be to go back into the dark just because it feels familiar. The news that is coming to your life, the shift that heaven has already set in motion, is going to pull you into that bright place. It will confirm things God has whispered in secret and confront patterns that have been silently shaping you. This is why you cannot just drift into this season. You have to walk into it awake. When things start opening, when truth starts surfacing, when influence, opportunities, or reconciliation begin to knock, there will also be new pressures. People who never noticed you before may suddenly want access to you. Old distractions may reappear dressed in more attractive clothing. The enemy does not resign just because God promotes you. He adapts. So this part of the journey is not just about receiving what God is sending, but about knowing how to carry it without losing yourself. You have already been in training, but now you must apply what you have learned in real time. One of the greatest dangers in a season of acceleration is assuming that open doors are always good doors. A door can be open and still be wrong. A person can be impressed by you and still be unhealthy for you. A platform can be large and still be unsafe for your soul. When God begins to move visibly in your life, pressure will rise to say yes quickly, to seize everything, to prove that you are not wasting your moment. But the same God who is accelerating you is also the God of order and wisdom. He is not calling you into chaotic striving. He is calling you into focused obedience. That means you will need to slow your reactions even as he speeds up your steps. You will have to check the motives underneath your decisions. Am I choosing this because I sense God on it, or because it soothes my insecurity? Am I walking through this door because there is peace in my spirit, or because I am afraid of missing out? C.S. Lewis wrestled deeply with this kind of inner testing in his own life. In The Problem of Pain, he explored how suffering and disruption can strip away our illusions about ourselves and about God. He realized that comfort can lull us into a sleepy, shallow version of faith, while pain forces us to confront what we really believe and who we really trust. Later, in A Grief Observed, when he poured out his heart after the death of his wife, he described how grief attacked not just his emotions, but his idea of how God should behave. It shook his image of a safe, tame God and pushed him toward a relationship that was rawer, more honest, and less sentimental. Why does that matter for you now? Because you are entering a season where the image you had of your life, of others, and even of God is being upgraded. You are no longer following him just because it is the religious thing to do, or because you hoped he would make your plans work. Your surrender, your pain, your questions have burned away many illusions. You are being invited into a more mature walk, where you trust God enough to follow him, even when his path is not flattering to your ego or aligned with your old timeline. In practical terms, stepping into this new season means guarding the core of your life more intentionally than ever. Your time with God in prayer and in his word cannot be an afterthought now. When things begin to move quickly, the temptation is to neglect the secret place, because you feel the pull of emails, messages, invitations, and demands. But the very acceleration that is coming will expose every crack in your foundation. If you allow your schedule to expand while your time with God shrinks, the weight of the new will rest on an old, weakened base. You cannot afford that. You will need the stillness of his presence to sort through the noise, to separate genuine opportunities from cleverly packaged traps, to recognize his no, even when everyone around you is shouting yes. You will also need to become ruthless about the voices you give authority to. In the last season, you learned to survive without certain people. In this one, you must learn to discern who is safe to walk with at a new level. Not everyone who applauds your breakthrough is committed to your wholeness. Some people are drawn to light for what it can do for them, not for what it means in the kingdom of God. You are called to love many, but trust few. Pay attention to who was there in your valley, not just who appears in your spotlight. Watch whose counsel pulls you closer to dependence on God, and who subtly encourages you to depend more on your own image, your own strategy, your own ambition. As this message unfolds in your life, and the shock of God's intervention starts rearranging things, you will constantly face three kinds of voices. There will be the voice of fear, always catastrophizing, always predicting loss, always telling you that if you obey God, you will end up alone or ashamed. There will be the voice of ego, always centering you, whispering that this is your chance to prove yourself, to silence critics, to build your own name. And there will be the voice of the Spirit, sometimes quieter than the others, but carrying a substance that the others do not. His voice will not always tell you what you want to hear, but it will bring a deep, anchored peace, even when he leads you in a direction that stretches you. This is where everything you have learned in the dark will pay off. You know what fear feels like now. You know what manipulation feels like. You know what it is to be praised on the outside but uneasy on the inside. Use that knowledge. Let the red flags you ignored before become non-negotiable warnings now. If a door requires you to betray the convictions God formed in you in the last season, it is not your door, no matter how glittering it looks. If a relationship